Fleshgait. Fleshgait, a shape-shifting, paranormal entity which targets humans, consuming both body and soul. They can mimic the voice and appearance of friends and loved ones, lulling victims into a false sense of security before they pounce. In natural or unnatural appearance, the Fleshgait is said to be a tall, emaciated cryptid with greyish flesh and incredibly long claws. The woods become deathly silent at their approach, and they are suspected of being responsible for many of the missing 411 disappearances. I've never been one for the outdoors, and never had any interest in sleeping out in a tent in the woods. Nope. The closest I ever wanted to get to the wilderness was lying in a warm bed and reading one of Algernon Blackwood's Canadian horror stories. But the guys wouldn't stop bugging me, which is how I found myself up north, in the woods above Rat Portage, signed up for a weekend of camping under the stars. At least, Carrie and her friend Zoe were there. Michael and Luke had come for the fishing and were planning to spend the 3 days doing just that. But, as I am no fisherman, I decided I would hike the woods with the girls. Yeah, it would have been perfect. Except for Burton. Burton was a big, good-looking guy, a little fleshy but not fat. He was loud and aggressive and great at spoiling the mood, or at least great at spoiling my mood. And he didn't like fishing either, so he chose to go hiking with us. Great. We arrived late afternoon the first day, and while the guys had their rods out right away, their fishing rods, the rest of us were left to set up camp. Guess who got to share a tent with Burton? Yeah. And he snores. And farts. I decided to sleep under the stars to get away from the hideous noise. I put my sleeping bag down by the remains of the still smoldering fire, lay down, and found I couldn't sleep. I could still hear Burton snorting. I could hear it as the woods had gone quiet, deathly quiet. I found myself listening intensely for what I couldn't say, and wishing that Burton would stop that noise. Something was moving around amongst the trees, moving lightly, with incredible stealth, and it seemed to be drawing closer. Damn that Burton! As the light from the smoldering fire died out, I caught a glimpse of something, a grayish blur moving through the shadows, flitting from trunk to trunk. Grayish? A gray alien? No. Too large, tall. I lay totally still, staring into the darkness, not even breathing. And then I saw 2 reddish pinpricks of light. Eyes? A pair of eyes? Looking at me? What was it? It was too tall to be a big cat, like a bobcat or mountain lion. And bears didn't have red eyes. At least, I didn't think so. The thing, whatever it was, continued to stare at me, and I know this is strange. It felt like it was reading my mind, reading my thoughts, literally pulling them out of my head. I shut my eyes in a vain attempt to block it out. And then I heard it. The thing was snoring. Snoring. Or, to put it more accurately, it was making snoring noises. It was as if someone had tape-recorded Burton's buzzsaw and was playing it back. It was a good imitation, but it also had an unreal, metallic quality to it, a falseness I found jarring. But what manner of creature could mimic sound in such a manner? I wanted to get up, rise to my feet, and go and confront it, find out what it was, and I was actually getting out of my sleeping bag when the fear hit me, instinctive, primordial fear, which threatened to turn my bowels to water. The sheer terror that prey feels towards a predator. Whatever this thing was, it intended to harm me. Fight or flight? I chose neither. Instead, I buried my head in my sleeping bag, and eventually the snoring sound went away. Burton eventually stopped sawing wood. But before I managed to fall asleep, I thought I heard Burton's voice talking to me in his usual snotty way. "Hey, dude! Dude!" I must have imagined it. Burton was asleep, right? Right? In the morning, it all felt like a bad dream, and I tried to put it out of my mind. After a crap breakfast featuring burnt coffee, swimming in grounds, Michael and Luke headed back to the creek, leaving me free to hike the nearby trails with the girls and Burton. Zoe had brought a bird book along, and with her busily engaged, I would have had Carrie all to myself. Would have. But then there was Burton. Old Bertie was playing the one-upsmanship game. If I talked about a band or a film, Bertie would sneer that they sucked. I wanted to know what Carrie liked to read and said I was into graphic novels. "I stopped reading comics in grade 5, Bertie bellowed with laughter. "Graphic novels are novels, not comics," I retorted angrily. "Whatever, dude," Bertie concluded in triumph. Yeah, the walk was like that. Meanwhile, Carrie was regarding us with amusement. "Go ahead and fight for my attention, you losers, you wankers." As if I'd have anything to do with either of you. Wankers. Maybe I should have gone fishing. We had been walking for about 20 minutes when Carrie started and said, "Where's Zoe?" This took both Burton and me by surprise. She was behind us. She was looking for birds," I said lamely. "But where is she now, genius?" Burton said aggressively, to which I answered, "I don't know, Bertie. Where is she?" I think we might have come to blows then. I had had enough of the fool and was ready to fight. But Carrie looked like she was about to go into hysterics. "But where is she?" she cried. None of us had seen or spoken with her for at least 15 minutes, so we rushed back along the trail looking for her, calling her name over and over again until we found ourselves back at camp. We tried texting her, even called her phone. Nothing. Zoe had completely and utterly disappeared, vanished. We went and got Michael and Luke and began an immediate search. Someone suggested Carrie remain behind in case Zoe returned and needed help, but Michael nixed the idea. We already have one missing girl, he reasoned. We don't know what we're dealing with, so if anyone stays back, it should be a guy. I volunteered. Anything to get away from Burton. They headed down the trail, yelling Zoe's name. I quickly gathered up extra wood for the fire, in case we needed to build a fire as a beacon for Zoe to follow, if she wasn't found before dark. That done, I sat down on my ass and looked through a graphic novel while I waited and waited and waited. I heard them calling for quite a while, but eventually everything was silent. Silent. I mean, we were not that far from running water, and I could no longer hear even that. It was growing dark, too, way early. Too early, so I relit the fire. I started when I heard someone call my name. Someone who sounded like Carrie. Looking up, I saw her standing at the edge of the trees, regarding me with an expression I couldn't read. "Did you find her?" I called out. Carrie ignored my comment and instead came towards me, saying my name in a strange, blurred voice. "Carrie?" I sputtered in confusion. She had come up close to me, very close, very, very, very close, and had actually reached up and touched my shoulders, pushing me down onto one of the logs by the campfire and pressing herself up against me. "Carrie?" I started to say. This was something I had dreamed of, fantasized about, but I had never ever really expected it to happen. And now, was I dreaming? Carrie put a finger to my lips, a finger ending in a designer fingernail as long as a claw, and whispered my name. But just as she kissed me, I looked into her eyes, her beautiful dark blue eyes, and they were dead eyes, dead and soulless, and looking at me with a hunger which was feral rather than amorous. She wasn't giving herself to me. She was taking from me. And as she leaned against me, I smelled the stench of rotting flesh and almost drew away from her. Almost. When it was over, she left me, and I lay upon the ground, satiated, but also disgusted and depressed. It hadn't been like I had imagined it would be. It was now dark. I heard noises coming from the woods. The fire was smoldering, so I quickly added some kindling and got it blazing again. Michael and Luke were half carrying Zoe, who was sobbing uncontrollably. But the biggest shock for me was Carrie. Carrie holding hands with Burton? With Burton? WTF? "What happened?" I said, sort of stunned-like. "Burton found her," Carrie said joyously. "Was that after you left here?" I was about to say left me, but changed it at the last second to left here. I could see the question confused her, so I tried, "After you left camp just now." "She's never been back to camp. She's been with me the whole time," Burton said angrily, clearly staking his claim to Carrie's affections. I now became aware of what Zoe was saying. I got distracted, and when I looked up, everyone was gone. I couldn't see anyone anywhere. But I could hear your voice, she said, staring directly at me. I could hear your voice, telling me to come to you, just a little bit further into the woods, to come to you. And then I could see you, in front of me. But you just kept looking at me and leading me further into the woods. But you wouldn't stop. You wouldn't stop and wait for me. Then I heard Carrie and Burton calling me, and I looked away for a moment. But when I looked back, you weren't there. Why didn't you wait for me? Why? But Zoe, I protested, I never left camp. But if you were here the whole time, who was it I saw out there in the woods? Who, indeed? And who, or what, did I just make love to? If this is your first visit to my channel, please consider subscribing. My name is Warren, and I write and tell original ghost stories and original horror stories featuring such cryptids as the Night Floaters, werewolves, and the Black-Eyed Children. Please help me to reach my goal of 2,021 subs in 2021. Till midnight. Cheers.